we will, I think we'll go ahead and get started, at least with just an introduction. And then I think there's more people will be coming in. So I'll let them in as they sign in. But anyway, welcome everyone, and happy Passover week to those who celebrate. In the Jewish tradition, Passover is the important celebration that honors the Israelites' liberation from Egyptian bondage as told in the Torah. And this story is retold during the Passover Seder meal using an important text called the Haggadah, and plural is Haggadot. The content of the Haggadah evolved over time and includes prayers, psalms, and recitations compiled from Jewish texts and interpretations, including the Torah, Mishnah, and Midrash. And the Haggadah really provides the roadmap for the Passover Seder meal. So we're going to be talking about that today. Very excited because we're going to hear from Valerie Chambers, Campus Director of Hillel here at KSU. And then later, I will showcase some excerpts from the Bentley Rare Book Museum's growing collection of rare and historic Haggadot. So again, welcome to everyone. If you're new to the program, I'm so glad you're here. If you've been attending, I'm also so glad you're here. And if you were able to attend my in-person program last week, where you got to actually see and touch the Haggadah, I'm so thank you so much for attending. But again, if you didn't, this will be a virtual option for you. So excited to have you here. If you do celebrate Passover and you want to talk about some traditions that you and your family have, or a Haggadah that means something to you, we have space during the program to do that. So if that's something that you're interested in, we can absolutely do that. So I just want this to be a very conversational, as it usually is. So we're going to start first with our Where's Andrew segment. And I'm very excited. So Andrew, can you raise your hand so people know who you are? You're here? Okay, there he is. So every time we have a program, Andrew changes his background to some kind of bookish place, and we have to guess where he is. And usually it aligns with the theme for the day. So today, Andrew, I wasn't sure what you were going to do today, but I'm very excited to see. So Andrew, are there any clues you want to give us? You might, about geography, so we can get started guessing.
It is in North America.
Oh, it is in North America. Okay.
Yeah.
And it has to do with Passover?
More just Judaism in general.
Judaism in general. Huh. Okay. Well, it looks like it looks like a library that's, I guess accessible to the public. Is that true? Okay. And it's at a university?
Not a university.
Not a university. Is it a library that's associated with a synagogue?
No.
No.
Is it in New York?
It is.
Okay.
Is it part of the Smithsonian?
Oh, I think Andrew's frozen.
Yeah, I've had a bit of Wi-Fi trouble today, so sorry about that.
Oh, it's fine. And if you have to use the chat to let us know what we're saying is correct, then feel free to do that too. But Lori asked if it was part of the Smithsonian.
It is not actually, no.
It's not.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay.
I cheated and found it on Google. Would everybody like me to tell the answer?
Okay, well, not yet. Valerie, did you have a guess?
I mean, I know where it is, but I could ask a question that will give it more answers if that's useful.
Oh, sure. Why don't you go ahead and do that?
Is it in a museum?
Yes.
I still don't know.
Oh. The Jewish Museum.
Close. You have the right city.
Okay. Final guesses. Well, Valerie, if you know it, do you want to say it?
Maggie knows it too.
That is true. Maggie knows it.
Yeah, but I cheated.
It's at the Center of Jewish History in New York.
Yes.
Yay.
And I have the handouts for the chat.
Awesome. Exciting. Thank you so much. And I've never been there. Another place I need to go. Thank you so much, Andrew. And as usual, Andrew has put a handout about the location in the chat. So feel free to download that and learn a little bit more. That is so exciting. That's perfect for today. And congrats, Valerie. I wish I had a prize for you. That's awesome. I'm so glad you knew it.
I told you I liked books. So there's
Yes.
that.
Yes, absolutely. Very, very true. Yay. So again, we thank you. And for those of you who popped in during the Where's Andrew session, the Where's Andrew segment, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about Passover and the printed text that that is crucial or critical to the Passover Seder, the Haggadah. So I'm very, very excited. So we are going to go ahead and actually get started. We are going to talk to Valerie Chambers, who not only is our winner of the Where's Andrew segment today, but also is the campus director of Hillel here at KSU. So I have a few questions for Valerie, and it's again, these are questions for Valerie, but please do drop your questions in, add to the discussion. This is conversational as usual. And then we'll take a look at some of the Haggadot that we're collecting here in the Rare Book Room. So first, Valerie, can you tell us, I said your title, but what is your role here at KSU? And can you even tell us what Hillel is for those who don't know?
Sure. So Hillel is a student organization on campuses around the US and other countries around the world where we get to know Jewish students on campus. And really we're very pluralistic. We accept any and all people, Jews, anybody. I mean, even if you're not Jewish, we welcome them. What I tell students at KSU is, as long as you're not a jerk, you're more than welcome to join us and learn more. So Hillel is really great. The biggest point is for them to create a community, is for the students to create a community on campus. And I'm kind of there to guide them along their way, and also to meet students where they are in their Jewish journey. So if they're just beginning, wonderful. If they're very well versed in Judaism or what they know where they want to go, amazing. But we're there to just make sure to meet them where they are and then help them along the way. So that is what Hillel does. And I don't know if I really explained what I do, but it's really, I just kind of nudge students to do things Jewishly. Great programming on campus.
That's wonderful. So, as Hillel, I remember when I was at the University of Georgia as an undergrad, I remember hearing about Hillel. So Hillel is something that is, I guess, does every university system of Georgia school have Hillel represented?
So we're under the umbrella of like Hillels of Georgia. So we do have UGA, of course, Kennesaw, Georgia Tech, Georgia State are the big main campuses along with Emory.
Mm-hmm.
But Georgia College just started with one. Georgia Southern has one as well, which is really wonderful. Oglethorpe has a Jewish group on campus, and they've actually reached out to us recently. So, we're building, and, whenever students reach out to us, we're more than happy to come on campus and see what we can do to help.
That's awesome. That's great. My next question is, what makes you passionate about working with Jewish students in a campus setting?
Mostly because because it's when students for the first time are by themselves. They're making their own decisions. They're adults. they're, they don't have mom or dad or whomever, a family member there all the time to help them. And, that's usually when students try to figure out who they are. And at least Jewishly, we're there to help with that. So for me, I actually didn't have a Hillel on campus. I went to Georgia College and State University in Milledgeville. And in 2004, they didn't have. So it was definitely something that I wanted and needed. But that was also the time in my life that I kind of figured out that I wanted to be a Jewish professional and work with people in that kind of way. So so I really think it's important because it's at the time where they're growing to be themselves. So
that makes a lot of sense. And that's wonderful work. So let's get now more into this special week, Passover week that we're in. It's funny because I know that sometimes if you're not familiar with a religion or a culture, sometimes you're not even sure which holidays are most important and which holidays, the type of importance that different holidays have. So we're going to talk a little bit about Passover. Why is Passover so important in the Jewish tradition? I'll start with that.
I would say it's the celebration of the Exodus from Egypt. So, and it's also a Jewish story of redemption. So, Passover is important because it tells the story of when God led the Israelites and Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt from slavery. And they went through the desert and ultimately they went to the promised land. And, it's a time of celebration, but it's also a time and a reminder of the struggles that our ancestor went through. So I know there's this wonderful quote where people say like Jewish holidays are usually we suffered and now we eat. Like we suffered, we lived, and now we eat. And Passover is one of those holidays. But for at least me, myself, Passover is an important holiday because also that is the holiday that most Jews celebrate. Mm-hmm. I know we're going to talk about Haggadahs and Haggadot later, but the Haggadah is one of the most read Jewish text that most Jews and non-Jews read when they're talking about Judaism. And that's funny, but it's not funny at the same time. So, mm-hmm. It's important because we need to remember our history. So
mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Thank you for that. So, so during Passover, there's a Passover Seder. And I know even people who are non-Jews have usually heard that term before, a Seder. So can you tell us what are the elements of the Passover Seder? Because I think if you're not Jewish, a lot of times you just don't know what's a part of it.
So there's actually a lot of elements. But one thing I want to say is Seder actually means order. So, and there is an order to the Seder that everybody does and every Haggadah has, and there's about 15 things in a Seder. I will read them off quickly because I could go on that for a long time. But what I think is really special also about the Seder is that every person participates in this order. Mm-hmm. We start with the Kadesh, which is the blessing over the wine. And we'll do Urchatz next, which is you wash your hands. And Karpas is eating leafy greens, which is the parsley. We dip it in salt water to represent the tears from our ancestors. We have Yachatz, which is raising up and breaking the middle matzah, which half of it gets used for later on, which we'll get to in a second. We have Magid, where we tell the story of the Exodus. We make sure that we retell that story every year. After that, we do Rachatzah, which is washing your hands before eating. The Motzi, which is blessing over the meal. The Matzah, which is blessing for the matzah. Maror, we eat that bitter herb, which maror is what it means. Korach is when a lot of people call it a Hillel sandwich, funny enough. But korach is when you take that bitter herb and you take the charoset and you stick it on a matzah and you make a beautiful sandwich and you eat it. Mm-hmm. Shulchan Orech is your meal. And some people think when you do that, when you eat your meal, you're done, but you're not. Nope. This is a whole production that you're going through. And so after you eat your meal, like I said, we had that breaking of the matzah earlier. It's a phone and it's finding the afikomen. And what's great is kids find it. And sometimes adults find it when the kids hide it. It depends on what your family wants to do. And usually we barter for a prize for whoever gets that afikomen, which is wonderful. Barech is our blessing after we eat. Hallel is when we sing and singing joyful praising songs. And Yirtzah is a song to finish the Seder. So, I mean, it's a lot of steps, but I mean, Seders can go from 30 minutes to 3 hours. Honestly, it just really depends on how into it your family gets. So yeah, it's a big, long thing.
That's amazing. And that's a lot of elements, and that's quite an order, which I'm assuming is why the Haggadah is so important, because I don't imagine everyone memorized. I guess after many years of doing it, maybe you memorize it, but it's probably hard to to remember all of that. So in addition to, the Haggadah essentially provides that order. Is the Haggadah, so I was going through and kind of reading. So is it like a script basically for what to say and when to say it?
Yes and no. I think it's more of like a guide for the Seder.
Okay.
Hold on. I have a couple in front of me. We'll do this one, for example. It's a Maxwell House one. This one's from 2003. You're going to show a much older one. But I mean, it has all of the steps in it and tells like what you want to do and stuff like that. A more easier one is the one I have from PJ Library, which actually sends out books to kids. But they'll even have, it'll show like a lot of Haggadahs have pictures. So like this shows what the Seder plate is and what they mean. They do like a lot of Haggadahs make sure that it shows you how to light the candles and bless the children. And it even talks about the order and like what everything is. I don't know if you can see it very well, but like it talks about what the order is. And, it is definitely a guide, but it also helps with like the prayers you need to say. And sometimes you say a different prayer for the first night of Passover versus the second night. And so it's definitely a very helpful guide that you can use. And also, like I said earlier, it's definitely one of the most read Jewish texts. So, yeah. And honestly, there's so many different kinds of Haggadahs. There's thousands. I mean, they've made one in Klingon. Let's just be honest, which I think is hilarious.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, it's in different languages. It's in different, there's different, like, there's Ashkenazi texts, there's Sephardic texts, but it's telling the same story.
Wow. So, that I guess feeds right into my next question. So you showed us some really interesting Haggadot that you have in your house. So is there one special one that you remember as a child, or is there one that your children you found that they prefer, or are they passed down? So
it's funny. So when I was growing up, my grandfather would use the Maxwell House one, like the one from the 90s. But the thing is that he spoke Hebrew and Yiddish, and he just rushed through the Seder, and there we go. Like, we're done. But my other side of my family, we made sure to read every single verse. We made sure to go through it all, still use the same Haggadah. Very popular. But my favorite one actually is the PJ Library one, because it helps my kids understand. I have 2 children, and it helps them understand what's going on. And also because not only does it have pictures, which my children love, but it also has like not just the 4 questions, but like more storytelling. It has like little like things in here where it's like asking questions about like Pharaoh, like, is it cruel to make someone work hard? And it like makes the kids really think about what is they're actually like listening to and what the story actually is. So for me, I like this one because it helps people who aren't familiar with Passover, like, because we always invite people over or just my kids in general, learn more and ask questions and like encourage questioning, because I think that's also important for development.
That's wonderful. Can you tell us a little, I know you mentioned it to me before, but can you tell the group a little bit more about PJ Library?
Sure. PJ Library is, I don't, have you guys heard of Dolly Parton's book program where she sends out free books to people? So PJ Library is the same concept where Jewish children are sent books every month, and they're Jewish themed. I have about 150 in my house. um, between two kids. And once they turn 8 years old, they actually send like thicker books that are more, but all of them are usually age appropriate. When my kids were babies, they got cardboard books. But they talk about like Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur or the holidays, or they talk about different Jewish values and stuff like that. It's a really amazing program for kids, especially and parents, especially if parents aren't really familiar with a lot of Jewish traditions. I mean, I've learned a lot just from those books itself. So
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I wanted the group to hear because I feel like that's something that a lot of us really wouldn't have, I don't know, just wouldn't know about. So that's really, really exciting. Thank you. Well, those were all the questions I had, but I wanted to open it up to the group to see if the group had any questions for Valerie, and or if you do celebrate Passover or you have a Haggadah in your home or many Haggadot in your home. If you wanted to share a little bit about your own tradition, or no pressure, but if anyone wants to, I wanted to give space for that. Oh, yes, Tamara.
I just had a question, and it's tied in with books, so forgive me.
No, this is what's first.
My understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, of course, but my understanding is that so much of the Jewish tradition is in storytelling, and it's keeping the stories alive and making sure that the children, you tell the stories, and as you grow older, there's probably more nuances and details. So that suggests to me a very oral culture, you know what I mean? A very sort of based on the storytelling. But I know that there's also a reputation of the Jewish people being people of books, of the book, but of books. And could you talk a little bit about that, the oral history, sort of that oral component, and then the book component? And, do you see in different manifestations of Judaism around the world that maybe one is stronger than the other? Or do you have any insight or opinions on that? Broad question.
So what's interesting, I mean, if we're going to talk about like Passover, for example, in that story, like they have Haggadahs from the Middle Ages and probably even before. So like, and it actually used to be like a sign of status of having one of these or multiple of those. And by the way, Joy Ellen, the one Haggadah that I couldn't figure out what it was, it's called the Bird's Head Haggadah. It's made in the 1300s. It's from Germany.
Oh, wow.
Super interesting. You should look that up.
Wow.
But I think because Passover is like very like boom, boom, like there's an order to it, and having that Seder, writing it down is much easier. I haven't seen like oral stories, but I think really in a lot of Judaism, from what I've seen, and I could be mistaken as well, but like there's been a lot of writing down. Even the rabbis' commentaries are all written down. Not only do we have the Torah, which is the story, like all of the Bible stories, but we also have like the Midrash, and we have rabbi commentary, and it's all written down. And I think what I've noticed is, at least in Judaism, is we like writing stuff down because when we write it down, we're not going to forget it. And I think maybe the oral tradition, we may have had it, but I think more now it's about making sure that it's in print or on paper or on something that we can continuously pass it down. I hope that's it.
And of course, you have a long tradition of scholarship. I think of rabbinic scholarship and commentary and commentary on commentary and commentary on commentary and commentary on commentary. That creates a rich sort of scholarly framework, which I guess is mostly written, right? It's sort of engagement with the text.
And they don't all agree with each other at all.
Right. No. That's the whole point, right? is to bring things out. So I just think that, looking at sort of the Jewish contribution even to the history of the book, I think is kind of a fascinating thing maybe to think about. Just a lot there.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that question, Tamara. Does anyone else have questions or comments or stories or anything that they would like to share. I did have a question, or just something to bring up, that since we were talking about commentary, I noticed that when I was, since, I've been collecting Haggadahs that are much older, at least for the most part right now, but I had a chance to look at some more contemporary ones. And it's interesting because I noticed that the tie-ins, some of the tie-ins that that the Haggadot are making are really, they're talking about things like climate change and sustainability and social justice and all that. And I was thinking about that kind of commentary. So it's a little bit different for me, coming from a different religious tradition, but I guess having, making those connections, and, publishing a Haggadah that has that kind of focus. So that's something that's okay and accepted. And so I guess I wanted to talk a little bit with you, Valerie, about that. I guess those are the kind of things that's what makes Haggadah, I guess, special and, and living and relevant, right?
Yeah, it's a living document. You know what I mean? Like it changes. So for example, for my Seders, not only do we add an orange on our Seder plate to represent women, because a long time ago, I think, I can't remember the name, but there was a woman trying to be a rabbi, and a rabbi said to her, there's more likely to be an orange on a Seder plate than there is for a woman to be on the bima. So we put a orange on the Seder plate.
Wow.
And, and also like we've also integrated, because we have Elijah's cup where we fill that with wine, and the children go open the door for Elijah, and he comes in and, he joins us for his Seder. And I'm going to spoil some secrets. I then chug the wine, and when my kids come back, they're surprised. The wine is gone because Elijah drank it. But we also have Miriam's cup, which Miriam gave water to Moses. And so we have a thing of water for her, and we invite her to our Seder as well. So, there are more traditional ways to do it, but then there's also, we try to keep up with the times. And I mean, if you look at different Haggadot, not even now, but like the ones in the past, especially ones with pictures change and things change, and, society changes. And one special thing about Judaism is they like to keep with it. Keep with the times. And so sometimes, so we try to stay relevant. And I think that's a great thing.
That's really interesting. And I guess every family just can decide exactly what works for them. And that's really great. Thank you. Well, last call for any comments or questions before I showcase some of the collections, or the growing collection we have in the Rare Book Room. No? Well, if you think of anything, please do put it in the chat. But thank you so much, Valerie. I understand if you have things to do, you need to leave. And
happy to stay.
Oh, okay. That's great. Well, we're very excited. So I look forward to showing you all some things. And I've actually learned some information even since last week. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show you the Haggadot that we have in the Rare Book Room. I think y'all are going to love it. Okay. So the first one we're going to look at, let me see if I can, okay, here we go. The first one that we are going to look at was printed around 1794, 1795, and it's an Ashkenazic Haggadah. Let me see if I can, show you a picture. Okay. So again, this is late 18th century. And some things I learned is that this Haggadah is largely based on the 1785 Berlin Haggadah. It was printed by Rabbi Zvi Hirsch Siegel Spitz and his son, Rabbi Avraham Siegel. So this one is very interesting because it is actually in Hebrew and in Yiddish. So again, Ashkenazic Haggadah. So this is in the tradition of more Eastern European and German. It was printed in Offenbach, Germany. So I got very confused about where I was seeing Hebrew and where I was seeing Yiddish. So interestingly, I can zoom in here. So I think I know I talked to a Hebrew professor. So the bold text that we see here, and I believe here, the bold text is in Hebrew, and then the smaller text is in Yiddish. I believe the smaller text is in Yiddish. I can't tell the difference because I'm not trained to, but I don't know these languages. But the other thing I learned is that the Yiddish is actually in Rashi lettering. So I think I believe Rashi was a scholar, so that would be in his lettering there. So I see. Okay, Valerie says that's correct. Okay, great. Thank you. Wonderful. So I am very interested in this Haggadah for several reasons, but one, I mentioned earlier that it was based on the Berlin Haggadah of 1785. And the reason why that's important is because the Berlin Haggadah of 1785 was an influential text that strived to assimilate German Jews more deeply into the Germanic culture. And that shift was part of a larger movement of the Jewish Enlightenment, which I believe is called Haskalah. I don't know if I'm putting the emphasis on the right syllable there. But that Jewish Enlightenment in Europe, which took place during the 18th and 19th centuries. So this Haggadah is kind of stemming from that tradition. So fascinating. I think I have another image. So it also has some illustrations. It has about five woodcut illustrations. So we see here. See up close. One thing that, and Valerie, maybe you could help me here. One thing I found interesting is this idea of catchwords. So in books that were printed during the hand press period, so around 1500 to 1800, and not just, books in the Jewish tradition, but most Western or books that were at least European and American books, they would have a word. It's kind of hard to describe because Jewish is read from right to left instead of left to right. But generally in books, you'd have a word that would kind of be in, it's really hard to describe because I don't want to confuse anybody. But let's just pretend for a second that this book is in English. The catchword would be at the bottom right-hand corner, and it would be the first word of the next page. But right, exactly. So since we're reading this in Hebrew and Yiddish, I'm seeing, I think right here is the catchword, I think, because is this the same word as this? I'm thinking, yeah, okay. So it's the same tradition here. It's just, so I think that's really interesting because I was noticing, I think I was seeing catchwords and I wanted to just confirm that that's what I was seeing. So I find that really fascinating, just seeing that tradition persist as well. So next we're going to, Valerie says this page is giving the steps of the Seder. Wonderful. Okay, love that. Thank you for that added context. So next we're going to look at a 19th century Libernese Haggadah. So this Haggadah was printed in Livorno, Italy. And it was, so again, this is from 1876. And I find this fascinating. This one has really, really interesting because this Haggadah, again, was printed by a Hebrew printer from Livorno, Italy. And so this is exemplifying a Haggadah produced in the Sephardic Jewish tradition, which from what I understand, the Sephardic Jewish tradition is referring to Jews that live in, I guess, in the Iberian Peninsula and in Middle East as well, I think. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And so this Haggadah really got me because, again, one thing that I've learned is that I cannot assume that the entire Haggadah is in Hebrew. Because I think for me, someone who is, I'm used to the Roman alphabet, and I was looking at these characters and thinking, oh, this is in Hebrew, but actually we have Hebrew, we've got Aramaic, and we've got Ladino, which is a mixture or a combination of Hebrew and Spanish. So we've got several. So it could be that, I don't know if they all use Hebrew characters, or sometimes things are transliterated, but I don't know enough to be sure. But I do know that we just can't, I've learned to not assume. So interesting thing about the printing history here. For many years, the Libernese and Venetian Hebrew printers were in competition with one another to become the main suppliers of Hebrew books to the Jewish Italian communities. But by the end of the 18th century, the Libernese Hebrew printers, I think, had become the most dominant, which, again, this text is exemplifying. But what's interesting is these Libernese Hebrew printers did not hesitate to repurpose the 17th century woodcut illustrations that were created by their Venetian competitors. So what I'm saying is, in this Haggadah, these woodcut illustrations were actually based on the woodcuts that were used in the 1609 Venetian Haggadah. So they're reusing woodcut illustrations from a much earlier Haggadah created by some Venetian Hebrew printers. So we're kind of seeing this evolution of content, repurposing of content. So it's fascinating here. This is also an important Haggadah because, it's, again, based on the 1609 Venetian Haggadah. Oh, there's a lot of, I wanted to show some of the different text. But in the 1609 Venetian Haggadah, that was the very first Haggadah, I believe, to have woodcut illustrations of all 10 plagues. And so this Haggadah decided to use those.
Mm.
We do not have the 1609 Venetian Haggadah in the rare book room. I think that one would be really, really hard for us to get, but might be something. And I'm not gonna lose hope. However, there are several reference books that have scans and pictures from the 1609 Venetian Haggadah, and I've seen what the plague illustrations look like in that Haggadah, and they are very, very similar. So I could tell that these are based on that. Okay, and Valerie says, so the bold is Hebrew. So if we go back to here, so like this text would be like, that would be Hebrew. I can zoom in. I think I had a professor that was looking at this, and I think he was able to detect some Ladino, definitely.
The page you were showing before was, the bold was definitely Hebrew, the one with the pictures, and then the bottom was definitely not Hebrew. But I have not seen Ladino, but they do use Hebrew lettering. So yeah, so it's like the plague, and then that I would assume is Ladino if that's the language they're using.
That's fascinating. Thank you. All right, so now we are going to move on to our 1884 German Haggadah. This one is really lovely. It was published, compiled by Israel M. Yafet, and it was published in Frankfurt, Germany. So this one is in German and in Hebrew. And what I think was fascinating about this one is it also has a musical supplement in the back. But I wanted to show first an example. So this one's a little bit easier to detect the two different languages represented, of course. So again, we've got German and Hebrew, and we've got, looks like the notes are in German, or many of them are. Many of the notes are in German as well. And this one has, unlike some of our other pieces, this one also has a musical supplement in the back, not too many songs. But Israel Yafet was a choir director at a middle school in Frankfurt under Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch. So I don't know. I think he was known for his liturgical composition. So perhaps that's one of the reasons why we see this music in the back. And Valerie, you said at the end of the Seder, a family will sing songs, right? Okay, yeah. I don't know if these are I guess these are, I'm not sure what songs these are, but so that is that one. Again, another 19th century Haggadah. So next, one of our fun ones, our 1941 Maxwell House Haggadah. Andrew found out for us that the first Maxwell House Haggadah was printed in 1932. So while this wasn't one of the first ones printed, it is one of the earlier ones. So this is printed during World War II period. It was prepared by Joseph Jacobs Jewish Market in New York, compliments of Maxwell House coffee. And again, this one looks a little bit more ephemeral than maybe the last one that we looked at. So this one, it doesn't look like it was meant to necessarily last for a long period of time, but I'm so glad that this one has. So, and it includes an abridged 5-year calendar of Jewish holidays. And this one, again, is in English and in Hebrew, so we can more clearly probably see, we can probably understand this one a bit better. And it's very small, as you might be able to tell, it's very small. And it's interesting because the annual issuance of the Maxwell House Haggadah is very important because it helped to democratize the use of the Haggadah. I think it was easily accessible for people to get in stores, and it was pretty easily usable. So I think it gave many Jews the opportunity to lead Seders, maybe regardless of their educational or religious backgrounds. And so Maxwell House Haggadah is very, very important. And I'm so glad that we've been able to collect one from the 1940s. And I also love, you gotta love it in the back. Gotta love the original Passover coffee and certified kosher. Certified kosher. So gotta love it. But this is one of my favorites. And finally, for the Bentley Rare Book Museum collection, we have a lovely edition of Ben Shawn's 1965 Haggadah. So this is what the covers look like. So I did learn, I don't know Hebrew, but I did learn that this reads Haggadah Shel Pesach, I believe, Haggadah for Passover. So for those who aren't familiar with Ben Shawn, he was one of the most prominent Jewish artists of the 20th century. He was born in Lithuania, and he arrived in the US with his family when he was a child, and he quickly entered the art world. And he was known for depicting themes such as social realism, left-wing politics, and religion in his artistic works. And so the actual illustrated plates in this Haggadah he actually produced in the 1930s, but they are reproduced in this Haggadah using photolithography. You can get a sense of Ben Shawn's style here. And he was inspired by illuminated Hebrew manuscripts from the medieval period. So I think that's fascinating. And this Haggadah actually includes scholarly notes and text written by the British Jewish historian Cecil Roth. So it was a bit of a bit of a collaboration there. And Ben Shawn actually puts a really interesting personal note in the Haggadah as well about why this was important to him and how he remembers having Passover Seders in his father's home, and so things like that. So really, really amazing. finally, I wanted to show a few Haggadot courtesy of Professor Dan Sachs, who's a professor of art here at KSU. He had some that he shared with me and allowed me to make a few scans of. So just to show you again, some more contemporary Haggadah, but how lovely they can look. So this one is one that I think is just beautiful. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I just think it's gorgeous, and it actually comes in its own little box. But you can kind of see just how beautiful they can be. And this is a really nice contemporary one. It's on very like glossy paper. These are a few other examples. I've never seen this before. This is a Passover companion, but I don't think it's a Haggadah. I think it's more of a text that's kind of talking more deeply about the meaning of Passover. So I think that's quite interesting. And then this is this is an actual Haggadah on the right-hand side. So just really, again, you can see how the illustrations can differ, and very captivating. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yes, gorgeous. So that's it for the Bentley collections. And some things that we're thinking about and things that we're very excited. So right now we have 5 Haggadot in the collection. I'm really looking forward to expanding, maybe getting a 16th century Haggadah, maybe even 15th century, if we can go that far. I don't know. I might push it, see if we can. We'll see. But really, really, this is a very exciting collection. And anyone have any comments or any feedback on what they saw or anything like that?
It was fascinating.
Yeah. I agree. It's quite fascinating. I have learned a lot. I'm not embarrassed to say what I don't know either, because there are things that I absolutely, this is new to me, and it's just been fascinating. I'm loving being able to be able to learn. And again, if anyone ever has things they want to talk about with me, please do send me a message, because this is fascinating. Tamara asked, are there special publishers who publish Haggadot? That's a great question. In terms of, I have noticed that, at least with the text that I've been looking at, I've noticed that several of them, I don't know, this is, again, some of the older texts, I've noticed that several of them have mentions of different rabbis that were either printing them, publishing them, or people that they were publishing them that were, studied under certain rabbis. So for some of the older ones, I've noticed that. But in terms of just certain publishers who do, I'm not really sure. At least contemporary, I'm not sure. But I have noticed that a lot of them have mentions of rabbis in the older ones, or who studied under which rabbi, or they're affiliated or associated with certain rabbis, things like that. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank y'all so much for joining us today. And thank you, Valerie. Round of applause for Valerie. Thank you for sharing with us and for doing the work that you do. It's just so wonderful. And thank you for telling us more about Hillel. And it's just awesome. So please know, and I know Valerie is very welcoming. So thank you for always being so welcoming, even to those of us who don't know as much about Jewish traditions. So grateful for your generous spirit. And I wanted to mention to everybody that we will have our final Coffee with a Curator program of the semester on May 11th. That's a Wednesday, of course, and we're going to have Camilla Stiegel. Camilla, can you raise your hand as usual? So Camilla has been doing, again, some more wonderful work with our culinary collections here in the Rare Book Room. So we're going to get a chance for Camilla to talk about that. I haven't decided if we're going to do a cooking demo, if we're going to cook anything, but that could be kind of fun. I don't know. We'll see. We could do that again. We'll see, but mark your calendars and I'll be sending out more information on that. So again, for those of you who celebrate Passover, I hope that you have just a wonderful Passover week. And I hope that, and I look forward to seeing you all next month. All right. Yay. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.